Houston, but he doesn't score 20.
But I'm more concerned about that. It's just one of the great teams. You got to play against the best, and you got to beat the best. And obviously they don't have any for us. We're just getting back into.
Hey, Marky, how you doing?
I'm good.
30 seconds. I need to walk into another room.
Yeah, no problem. No problem. I got 30 seconds before I come back, or a minute before I come back. Anyway, so.
Well, tonight was supposed to be a marquee matchup, but not as much with the Warriors at Houston. The Dubs have Steph Curry back, but James Harden is out with a hamstring strain. Practice continues for wild card.
Okay.
All right, let's see here. Why NHRA needs to prepare now for the post-John Force era. Okay, and I got the 4 things that came out, and I saw you're talking very nicely to the, in the comments section, to the likes of Hugh Gartisire. I have it right in front of me right here. And
well, actually, the more important thing, and I'll mention it
sure.
in our conversation, is a number of NHRA drivers agreed with me on Twitter. They all said similar things, so that's kind of humbling, and
okay.
it also verifies some of the arguments I was making.
Okay, sure thing. And I mean, let's try to relate a little bit, because I know you were talking how it related to a lot of different motorsports. For instance, the sponsorship that everybody is trying to do here. Okay. Jerry Bonkowski of NBCSports.com has been covering NASCAR for just about as long as anyone can remember. It used to be USA Today. I saw that on your resume as well.
Yep.
And he joins us now. He's a frequent contributor to the show. He has just written a story on NBCSports.com, and especially it's the motorsports section. In fact, go to motorsports.nbcsports.com, and you'll find this piece that was published just yesterday, or excuse me, 2 days ago, by Jerry Bonkowski. Why NHRA needs to prepare now for the post-John Force era. Now, a lot of people might be saying, look, drag racing, I mean, I know they got a drag strip, but that's not quite that mainstream. But a lot of the problems in NHRA are plaguing all of the motorsports. And Jerry Bonkowski is talking to fans. He's talking to drivers. He's talking to us about this. Okay, John Force, legend in drag racing, NHRA, but 69 years old. A lot of his family has taken his mantle place, won championships in recent years. You wonder how much longer John Force can go on. And this mirrors a lot of what has happened with NASCAR in the departures of Little Lee, of Tony Stewart, of Jeff Gordon, of potentially, Danica Patrick or whoever else you want to name. But there are other similarities, and you talk about 4 problems, or well, let's go with this. What are the problems right now that you see in NHRA in promoting itself?
Well, there's several areas, Marky. I mean, they just they have a new president, Glenn Cromwell. He took office on New Year's Day. He had known about this for a couple of months already. That was coming, but he replaced Peter Clifford, who'd only been in his role for about 2.5 years. Peter moved up to the CEO level. But, from a more broader picture, there's no question that NHRA, just like NASCAR and, IndyCar, Formula One, they're all struggling for sponsorship. They're all struggling for attendance. They're struggling for TV ratings. I mean, there's just so much going on right now that has to be looked at. And I think that NHRA, and it was kind of the genesis of my story, was that, like you alluded to, NASCAR has been losing a number of its biggest drivers. And how is it changing, to the going forward? And that's what an NHRA has to do, because there's no question John Force is the biggest star the sport has ever seen. He's the winningest driver, 146 race wins, or is it 148? I'm sorry, 148, and then 16 funny car championships. No one has ever come close to that, in the past, and I don't think anyone that will ever come close to it in the future. So, John, right now he has contracts through 2019 for his team. And the question remains, where does he go going forward after 2019? He'll be 70 years old at that point. A lot of the sponsors that he has, helped him out of it was a significant problem that he had a few years back before he got, like Peak came into the picture and some of the other sponsors, because, he had lost Ford sponsorship, he had lost Castrol sponsorship all in the same year. The future was looking very dark for John at that point, but they came, gave him a lifeline. He's doing very well. But again, like I said in the story. You've got to start thinking ahead, not only for John Force and John Force Racing, but what it's going to mean and impact to the NHRA. And that's part of the reason why I wrote the story. I've been kind of sitting on this for about 6 months or so, and it was just one of those things where it was kind of like a stream of consciousness. I started thinking about one thing led to another. That's kind of what I said at the beginning of the column. I said this is like 3 columns in one, but it all boiled down to one thing, that NHRA needs to start looking at where does it go from here. I mean, it does not have, in my opinion, it does not have any driver of the caliber of force that can take over as the face of the sanctioning body. I mean, Force has been the guy for 30 years, and I mean, there's a lot of great drivers out there. Don't get me wrong. You got guys like Antron Brown, Ron Capps, Tony Schumacher, Sean Langdon. I mean, there's plenty of guys out there, but no one will ever replace John Force. And I think at this point, NHRA has to start looking at where do we go from here. Post, as I call it, the PF, the post-Force era.
I was intrigued, as you write, Brittany, his daughter, won last year's Top Fuel title, and I was thinking, a feminine, Little E, that sort of thing, perhaps as all the old Intimidator fans gravitated towards Dale Earnhardt Jr., I thought, maybe this could happen, but a different gender. Now, that's very interesting, so perhaps some optimism there, but, you talk about so many of the same problems in NHRA or what we see in NASCAR, and I'll just give you one that I started noticing. It occurred to me, it's the Mellow Yellow series, and we just lost Jerry here, but I will we'll get him back here, and just the Mellow Yellow series, and I'm thinking, what in the world? I mean, the Mellow Yellow series, was Tab not available to sponsor this? Could they not get Surge to make a comeback and sponsor NHRA? Mellow Yellow. When was the last time I had a Mellow Yellow and such? Anyway, but regardless of that, you write here, as we have you back here, Jerry Bonkowski, that there have been less than full 16-car fields and races last few years. Reminds me of those 40-driver races in the Monster Energy Cup Series that we saw this past year. Sometimes I thought that was good on the short track. I'm actually in favor, but that wasn't they weren't doing it for safety. They were doing it because they couldn't find drivers that could pay this, And you come up with a few ideas on how to fix funny car racing, the NHRA, and what are some of those ideas that you have?
Well, the one thing, Marky, and I don't like to go off, just with my opinion and not have things to back it up. A lot of what I wrote and some of the ideas or suggestions I gave are based upon a number of conversations I've had with people in the sport, drivers, team owners, crew chiefs, and that. And there was one conversation I had back in, I think it was June of last year, 2017. Had a conversation with a very, very, very well-known team executive in the sport, very big team. And, we've known each other for several years. We've really took a good liking to each other. And he's been very willing to confide with me. I mean, a lot of stuff has to be off the record, but, still it serves as food, if you will, for me in terms of being a reporter and getting ideas and that. And one of the things he said was that the biggest problem is, of course, money, and not just the sponsorship, but you have to remember, we have on a typical NHRA national event weekend, we have 4 qualifying runs, 2 on Friday, 2 on Saturday. Then you have, if you're fortunate enough to make it all the way to the final round, you have 4 rounds of eliminations on Sunday. Each round in the Nitro ranks, I've heard numbers anywhere between 10,000 and 25,000 a run. Just one, one qualifying run, one elimination run. I mean, it's an expensive proposition. I mean, nitromethane is extremely expensive as the fuel. I mean, you have to repair parts and literally rebuild an engine between rounds every single time. I mean, there's a lot of cash that's involved in, being laid out for this. And this individual that I spoke with, and again, I'm keeping his anonymity at his request, but he made so much sense. He said, if we only had a 2-day show, like a Saturday and a Sunday event, or maybe even if I'd be willing to try a Friday and Saturday, but I don't know if that would be successful. But the point I'm making, though, is that, if you had 2 less runs to qualify for, and really the cars are so tuned in these days, you don't need 4 qualifying runs. The point is, though, that, a typical team could very easily save 50 grand or up to 50 grand, on a typical race weekend if they had one less day of qualifying, if they didn't have to go through as many parts as they go through. They obviously they have at least 1 day less of lodging, hotels, that kind of thing for all their team members. I mean, you're talking probably on a typical team, you're probably talking at least 15 to 20 hotel rooms per individual team member. That all adds up. And, I apparently struck a chord because I was quite not only humbled, but it was also kind of verified, some of the things I suggested when I saw a lot of drivers reach out to me on Twitter, like Ron Capps last year, 2016 20 car champion. I've known Ron for a long, long time. He was the first one that kind of got the ball rolling. He totally agreed with my column. Sean Langdon came on and he said the same thing. J.R. Todd. There was a number of people within the organization, within the sport rather, that even one of the John Forster mechanics agreed with me. So that told me I probably was on the right track. But the point is that the NHRA needs to start saving money. The teams desperately need to start saving money. And if they can save, there's 24 races. If they can save, let's say, $1 million, and that's not being a reach. That's a very realistic number. You know how much that would help a team if they could save $1 million, over a 24 race national event schedule. So that was, one of the biggest things is to cut the weekends down from 3 to 2 races. I mean, two days rather. I mean, there are certain races like the U.S. Nationals, Indianapolis. I would not touch at all. That's just the tradition. You don't want to change it. Or maybe the Winter Nationals or the Winston or the World Finals rather. The 2 races in Pomona, I probably wouldn't touch those as well. But there are so many other races in between where there's a lack of attendance on a Friday, a big lack of attendance. And one other thing I want to make, I know you've got a couple of questions, but one other point I want to make, I had a couple of people within the industry that also reached out to me on Twitter, and they were saying about, that what are we going to do to replace the money that we would lose on a Friday? Well, there's not a whole lot of money that you're going to lose. And then, the other comments were about, well, we need to make more money for the NHRA and for the track owners. And my retort to that was, well, what are we in business for? Are we here just to make money for them and, raise their bottom line, or are we here to entertain fans? I mean, if it's all about money, fans are not going to come out. I mean, the ticket prices are already high, parking's high, and, you're trying to tell me that we need to keep it a 3-day weekend because we have to put more money in the pockets of the NHRA or in the track owners. I don't agree. I think you need to put in the money in the pockets of the fans so they have more disposable income at the track. They get a good show. They get a lot of good entertainment. And they go away happy, after a day or two of a 2-day weekend. 3 days is really pushing it.
Now, would you, by any chance, wish to shorten, because you do allude that many of the problems of NHRA are for all of motorsports, would you be receptive to shortening weekends or weeks, shall we say, for NASCAR dates?
Well, I think we've already started seeing that. I mean, Richmond did that last year. They had a 2-day show, and, it proved to be very popular. And I think that, you're going to see more and more of that going forward. I think that, maybe it won't be this year, but I think certainly in 2019, 2020, and going forward, you're going to start seeing more NASCAR events that, will be a 2-day show. Maybe qualifying and practice on a Saturday and then racing on Sunday. Or I'm trying to remember, was it the Richmond race or was there another race that they had practices on one day and then they had qualifying the day of the race? And I think that's actually a very intriguing potential possibility to do that. So, it's just, like I said, Mark, it's all about the fans. It can't be about the sanctioning body. It can't be about, how much money they can make. It has to be about drawing in more fans. And if you can do a few things to make things easier for fans, make things more affordable. I mean, I don't want to call out, your area, the Bristol area, but let's face it, one of the biggest, the most expensive races to go to for a NASCAR race are the 2 races at Bristol because, you go to Johnson City, you go to Bristol, Virginia or Tennessee, you look for a hotel anywhere in the area, they're going to jack up the prices to $300 a night or more. And a lot of fans just can't pay that anymore. And
also, I mean, you might have to drive from 2 hours away. It's not unusual to see people come from Asheville or wherever to Bristol. So I will say this, though. I know for the spring race, here, our studio is in Irwin, Tennessee, which, if you're not familiar, about maybe, I'd say 40, 35 miles away from the track. So normally the hotels around here would fill up. They did in the past. Spring race last year, I was talking to them. No, they did not. And I mean, I said, no, we had 6 rooms available here for anyone who wanted to stop up from the night who was just driving down the interstate. And
Yeah, but let me ask you a question, though. They had 6 rooms available. Why did they have them available? Because of the price.
Possibly, or the fact that, I mean, the spring race is half the attendance of what it used to. But we could go into one of the things I actually liked your third idea here, and it's that run NHRA's so-called semi-pro cars as the same day as the pros to fill the time that would previously have been filled by sportsman drivers on track. So, in other words, Top Alcohol Dragster and Top Alcohol Funny Car, along with Pro Modifieds, would not only easily fill the sportsman driver hole on Saturday and Sunday, but it's no secret they already have a very healthy and loyal fan base that the sportsman drivers don't have. And I'm also thinking semi-pro drivers, that's kind of like, the local guy, he's got all his friends, they come out, everybody from work, they all cheer, for that sort of matinee event. I've been to Charger Series races, I've been in the pits of my friends, I've loved that. Here, Marky, let me show you, I had to change the distributor here before this race, see, and all that. That's just an insight you don't get any other sporting event you would ever attend. And, but you're talking about this. You also, though, would increase the number of events for pro stock motorcycles from 16 to 20 races a year. Now, how would increasing the motorcycle races work with shortening the schedule to just the weekend dates?
Well, think about this. This was, you mentioned about the sportsman racing. What I would like to see is NHRA not do away with sportsman racing. I don't intend that at all. But, let's not have sportsman racing on most of the same weekends, the national event weekends that we have now. Because, I'll give you a perfect example. Last July here in Chicagoland, we had the annual NHRA race here. And I was there for 3 days, the whole weekend. And every single time that the pros either stopped qualifying, they finished their qualifying round, they went back to the pits, or even during the eliminations, they would bring out the sportsman cars, and the stands would empty. I mean, there'd be like nobody in the stands. They'd be out, in the midway, either buying some souvenirs or getting some food or whatever the case may be. And this was something that I've talked a number of times to people in the past. And if you go, let's say, to a NASCAR weekend, it's not very often you're going to see like the K&N series or the Whelen Modified series. I mean, you'll see a few during the course of the year, but for the most part, NASCAR keeps their what I would call sportsman drivers, their smaller ranks, if you will, separate from their Cup, Xfinity, and Truck Series. And that, to me, is what NHRA needs to do. I mean, yeah, they've got a huge membership base. They've got a lot of sportsman racers. But I think that the sportsman racers kind of clog up things, if you will, on a national event weekend. So what do you do to fill the hole that would be taken up by the sportsman racers? Well, you bring in the pro modifieds and give them a few more races. You bring in the top alcohol dragsters and top alcohol funny cars. Have them fill in some of the time void. Bring in the pro motorcycles. There's a lot of people that don't really realize that pro stock motorcycle is really a very popular class. And one of the things I've heard from many people is that they'd like to see more races. I mean, right now they only do 16 of the 24 national events. Why can't they do 20? I think that if the teams can get the funding together to take on the 4 extra races, it would be good for them. It'd be good for their sponsors with more, recognition and notoriety. And it'd be good for the fans. So I just see that as a win-win for everybody.
More events, more concentrated, more choices. I see what you're talking about. Yeah.
Exactly.
All right. Now, one of the things, and I know that there are comments after your story on NBCSports.com, and it's actually in the motorsports section, which is, and just do a Google and you'll find this, or any internet search engine you choose. Jerry Bonkowski, why NHRA needs to prepare now for the post-John Force era. But a lot of the people that comment on that, they talk about the cost associated with attending the races. They also talk, a gentleman going by the name B. Killman, that, you can clearly see attendance has dropped and continues to do so. I go by myself because I can't get anyone to go with me. They're just not interested anymore. And I just mentioned how the spring race at Bristol, I mean, the attendance has gone down from 150,000, let's say, to 75,000 easy. They don't release the attendance, but you can see the empty seats. It's got to be that. Why do you think, I mean, is it all about the cost, or are there other factors that you think may have worked against motorsports in this last decade, working against its popularity?
Well, the biggest thing, Marky, is back in 2007, 2008, when the big recession hit, a lot of fans had to, they were realistic. They had to cut costs, and oftentimes, seriously cut costs. And one of the first things that go are the luxuries, and that would be like going to a race. One race. I mean, some fans were going to numerous races a season. They had to cut back and again the number of races they go to, or they didn't have to eliminate going to races entirely. It wasn't so much it was against NASCAR or NHRA or IndyCar. It was just an economic reality for a lot of the fans. And as we've gone through that last decade since then, a lot of fans, I guess, got to the point where they realized, well, we love the sport still, but we really didn't miss it not going there anymore. Or they would watch it on TV rather than going to the event physically and watching it from the race stand or the grandstands rather. So I think that when you look at where the sport is at now, all motorsports for that matter, they're all trying to find a way to lure fans back. They're all trying to find a way to lure new fans into the sport. And especially with that NHRA drag racing, you have such a sport that is so full of senses. I mean, you go to a track and you're watching a race. I mean, you have the loud sounds. You have the smell of the nitromethane burning. I mean, that stuff can really that's like cayenne pepper multiplied by 50. I mean, it gets you going. Your eyes start watering. Your nose starts dripping. That kind of thing. You got the visual of the speed that's going on too. So I mean, it's something that is not central to one form of motorsports. All form of motorsports are feeling the same problem, and they're trying to find a way to lure fans back. They're essentially using what they do best to bring the fans in. But again, this is a society these days. We've got so much going on in social media. There's so many different attractions that are out there that people can spend their money on. I mean, let's put it this way. Let's say a family of four. They want to go to an NHRA or a NASCAR race, and they're going to spend probably $200, $300, $400, just to go to the race itself. And we're not even talking about potentially with the gas to drive there, maybe a hotel room for a few nights and all that kind of thing. Then you're all of a sudden you're looking at $1,000 for a family of four. Now then you look at that, and that's for maybe 1 day or maybe 2 days after the racetrack. Whereas you could take your family of four to a really high-end dinner for maybe a couple hundred, maybe $300, and you bond with your family there, and you go home and you don't spend $1,000. You spend a lot less. So again, there's a lot of situations out there for fans to spend their money at in different forms, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a motorsport or a sport-related event. I mean, there's just there's just so many choices out there, and that's the biggest obstacle that all forms of motorsports are facing these days: is how do you attract these fans to not go to a big dinner with the family, or not go, let's say, to a movie theater, or maybe a concert, or some kind of a fair, or whatever, other kind of events.
Well, Jerry, I have to pause for a commercial here right now, and also our sports update. But I'm going to ask you if you can stay on the line just a little bit. And by the way, congratulations! I can hear you that you're much healthier than you have been in a couple of other spots. I'm very relieved to know that. But one of the things, I actually have one more question. I don't know if I'm going to be able to get to it, but why don't we go to commercial, and if there's time afterwards, I'll ask it to you then. If not, I'll make a comment, and we'll go from there. Tri-City Sports Now. I'm actually keeping this on Facebook Live. I've kind of touched on this. We talk about sponsorship and all that. See, I've got a thing, and I go, this will last until about, I'll have a very short segment here, and I am kind of intrigued by this here, and I can do this. What do you say we do this, Jerry? Let me let you go. Can I call you back in like 5 minutes or so? And then I'll bring you, because I'm going to have like a 1 minute segment, and I'll even let you know real quick. We're still on Facebook Live here. I'll let you know. I'm going to stop this, and then I'm going to